God, amen. Today's gospel is about Christ sending out his 70 disciples out on a mission. But he doesn't send them as workers, but he sends them as representatives of himself. And St. Paul says in the second epistle to Corinthians that he says that he is an ambassador of God, or an ambassador of Christ. And it's important for us to understand today how all of us are called to be ambassadors, and what is the meaning of an ambassador. When St. Paul uses the word ambassador, there are so many meanings that come with that title. And it is actually a huge responsibility to be an ambassador of a country. To be an ambassador of a country representing your home country in another foreign land. You are given authority to speak on behalf of the country. You are representing that country, its values, its priorities, everything on behalf of your own country you are representing before the eyes of a foreign land. But we are not representing as ambassadors a country, but we are ambassadors of God himself. And that in itself has to be one of the most powerful titles that God has given to his people. Not that we would be his servants, that's one thing. Not that we would be his friends, but we would be his ambassadors. I'm going to try to explain what it means to be an ambassador. The first thing is, you have to be able to speak the language of the country that you are representing. Right? And what is the language of God that he speaks? What is the language of God that when I go and I have to represent God himself to the world, which is a foreign land, me as a heavenly citizen, I'm representing God himself. So what is that language that I have to speak? It's none other than the language of love. God himself describes himself as love. And how is it that we could ever call ourselves the ambassadors of Christ unless the primary language of our life is the language of love? Everywhere I go, I am representing love. And I am the example of what love should be. And when Christ gave us the example of love, he didn't just give us any example, but he gave us a sacrificial love, an unselfish love, a love with no limits. Now that's a big title. That you would have to be able to speak the language of God, which is the language of God's love to the world. We are called today to be ambassadors of Christ. I wonder how it is that we can express the love of God. How is it that we can express the love of God everywhere we go? I just came back last night from the high school mission that we were doing. We're doing a mission in Delaware on one of the beaches out there. We came up with an idea of doing random acts of kindness where we're going to break up the kids into groups, and everybody has to go do like 25 random acts of kindness. 25 acts of kindness in 2 hours is a lot of acts of kindness to do. So they have to go and just open doors for people, do whatever they can to basically fulfill the obligation of doing these random acts of kindness. And that now they're forcing themselves to think very hard, how is it that I could show love in any way possible? I have 2 hours, okay, in a foreign place. I don't know where I am. But I just have to find out 25 ways of showing random acts of kindness. Today I'm calling us to go out and make a plan for yourself this week. Do your best to speak the language of love. Speak the language of love representing God, because today the gospel is sending us out and is saying, you are my ambassadors. So the first thing is you have to be able to speak the language of love. So I'm going to ask you to try to do 25 random acts of kindness for a week, not within 2 hours. To be honest with you, how great would it be to see for us doing random acts of kindness within our own community? Within us saying, instead of me criticizing people within my own church, I'm going to serve them. I'm going to love them. I'm going to welcome them and embrace them as God Himself. What a shame it would be if we who are the ambassadors of Christ went out into the world and showed a different language of judging others, of disrespect, of nitpicking at people's mistakes. Imagine if that was the language of God, where would we be? Where would we stand if the language of God was, oh, guy in the back is making a mistake. That lady made 3 mistakes today. And we're looking to find out how it is that I can find the mistake of another. That would be a very shameful representation. Another thing is, as an ambassador of Christ, you have to remember that the land that you are going to is not your permanent home. You are just a visitor. You are there representing your home country. We are citizens of heaven in a foreign land, which is the world. And we are called that when we are there, not to consider ourselves members of this foreign land. That we are still representatives of our heavenly home. That when we go, we are representing the heavenly life. We are living like the angels in our character, in our service. What would happen if the ambassador went and he was out looking for a permanent home in this foreign land, saying, I'm going to be here forever, and so might as well get settled. I have no plan on going home. That would be a shame. If the ambassador of our country went and settled in a foreign land as if they were no longer coming back, as if they forgot completely that they are representing their homeland, which is heaven. So the second thing is we have to understand that to be ambassadors, we have to remember that we are in a foreign land. And the second thing is that we have responsibilities to make peace. Right? The ambassador of the U.S., when they go to China, right? Their work is to ensure that there is peace between America and China. If they are doing anything else, if they are creating animosity or tension between China and America, that ambassador has to come back. They are no longer welcome to be the ambassador of America. And it is extremely important that we ourselves understand our mission of making peace between our homeland and our foreign land. We have a mission to make peace, to bring reconciliation to the world, back to God, that we would bring God's people back to Himself. Our goal is to make peace. It must be our mission that everywhere we go, we are trying to make peace with the members of this foreign land, with the people of the world, winning people back to have peace with the kingdom of heaven, having peace with God. And we have this burden. St. Paul says, woe is me if I do not preach the gospel. When is it that Christ says, woe to you? Throughout the Gospels, we see that Christ is telling the Pharisees, woe to you. Damned are you. Judged are you. Condemned are you. How is it that St. Paul could say, woe is me if I do not preach the gospel? He's almost saying, I will be judged. I will be condemned if I am not sharing the good news. How is it that I could possibly understand my own salvation and not feel that everyone around me has to know it? How is it that I could go into work and see my coworkers I've been working with probably for 15 years, and I look at them face to face every day, and I have no intention of sharing the message of salvation to them? How is that possible? How is it that I could possibly understand what it is that I've received? You see, St. Paul understood that he was going to kill the Christians, and God called him, He transformed his life, He saved him, He accepted him, and He made him His own. So St. Paul says, necessity is laid upon me. I don't have an option in this. Judgment will come upon me if I am not sharing the gospel. Is that our message? Have you understood the great act of salvation that was done for your own life? That you would say, woe is me. Judged will be me if I do not preach the gospel. How could I have possibly understood the great gift of salvation given to me, and I'm not sharing it with the world? I'm not sharing it with my own kids. Often when I visit families, I tell them, how much do we pray with our kids? معلش يا أبونا إحنا مشغولين. You don't share the message of salvation with your own family? Abuna, we're busy, so we don't have time to share the message of salvation with our own kids? That when they get to high school, often, when we try in the ministry to speak to our high school kids, it's almost like many of them, they don't know anything. They don't know anything about salvation. They don't know anything about their God. They don't have a personal relationship. What's going on? We need ambassadors in our homes. We need ambassadors in our homes with our children. We need ambassadors in our communities, in our cities. There's nothing worse than, imagine if a church were to leave the area. If the church were to have, a for sale sign on the front lawn of the church and say, we have to move to another area. How would the community react? Would they say, finally these people are out of here, they brought destruction to our city, they park on our lawns, they do all these funny things, get them out of here? Or is it like, what is going to happen to our city? This church, if they were to leave the community, what would happen to Fairfax? Would it be changed? Would anybody know the difference? We have to be ambassadors to God. Could you imagine God going to a place and the place not knowing the difference? God coming and leaving and nobody knew that God came? That wasn't Christ. His disciples, it says that they turned the world upside down. I pray that we would take this calling to be ambassadors of Christ very seriously. This is a title in which you speak on behalf of God Himself. We are called to be ambassadors for Christ. Who is it that you are representing in this world? Who are you the icon of? Are you the icon of love? Are you the icon of service? Are you the icon of Christ Himself? Or are we the icon of maybe successful people? We're the icon of intellectual people. We're the icon of rude people. What are we the icon of? If I see you, what are you representing? I pray that each and every one of us would say, Lord, every day teach me, show me how it is I can represent you. How can do acts of kindness where I am searching people to love. You see, Christ was searching to see how He can love and who He can love. I pray that would be the spirit of our hearts and the spirit of our church. That truly we would be, as a church, God's embassy, and that God would see that this is my representation here on earth, and glory be to God forever. Amen.